Is my screen visible to you? Can somebody respond to me? Yes, yeah, thank you. So I don't need to introduce myself. Probably most of you students knew already me very well, and even if you don't know, no issues. So as it is a GATE training program, here I am to take the classes on database management systems, where I have planned to take these 5 days in this format. So on the first day, we will have a complete overview on ER diagrams and we will discuss some questions on ER diagrams. Tomorrow, I'll take up functional dependencies and normal forms. On third day, we will go up with SQL. On fourth day, relational algebra and relational calculus. And on fifth day, we'll go up with transaction management and concurrency control. So this is the schedule that I have prepared. Uh, just a minute. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. HOD ma'am has messaged. So this is the way that I have planned for. So in today's session, for the first 1 hour, we'll be discussing about a quicker revision. I do not say that it is an explanatory session because it is for GATE, and that too you are in final year. I hope that you must be in a position to recollect all these topics, right? So only for that sake we will be brushing up the things in 1 hour, and the rest 1 hour will focus on the solutions for the bits. We'll discuss on bits. Okay. So coming to ER models, ER diagrams. What does ER diagrams mean? Some can somebody? What do you mean by ER? Use your chat window, please. What do you mean by ER? Yes. Sorry, Nikita. It is not entity relation, it is entity relationship. Please make a note that there is a difference between relation and relationship, and we have to be very much focused because we are speaking about RDBMS. In RDBMS, a table is referred to as a relation. So the general terminology where relationship and relation are both same, but with respect to RDBMS, relation is a table, relationship is the connectivity between the tables. Okay, so here these ER models are the entity relationship models. So it is a kind of data model that comes under object based data model. So what is the basic purpose of data model? Can somebody answer? Why do we use a data model? Why do we use a data model? You are in final year, almost placements are going on, the CRT trainings are going on, so you should respond. No answers? Or you don't want to communicate? Okay, so let me continue. The data model is the one which is allowing you to depict the data by making use of the data semantics or the data constraints or the data relationships. For example, if you consider that you wanted to construct a building, directly you cannot go up with construction of the building. First of all, we must have a blueprint of the architecture what we wanted to construct. Decide on whether the construction is good or not, whether the architecture is good or not, whether it is good enough to have these many number of bedrooms and whether it fits into the space that is allocated for construction. So when once all such constraints are clarified, then only you can go up with construction physically. So in the same way, here the data models are used before developing the database. So before you develop the database, you prepare a data model where you graphically represent the data in the form of objects. So under data models, you do have different types like object-based data model, record-based data model, and physical models. So among them, object-based data models is the one in which ER models is the prominent one which we'll be using in DBMS. So the core components of ER diagrams are entities, relationships, and attributes. So what an entity mean? So here entity, usually we define it as any real world object that is distinguishable from other objects. So what do you mean by that? So if you consider myself as an entity, can you call me as an entity at all? Can you consider a faculty as an entity? Yes or no? So how to decide that? First of all, we should think whether it is existing in the real world. Does the faculty exist in the real world? Yes. Then, can you distinguish one faculty from the other faculty? That is our next question. So, if you are able to distinguish one faculty from the other faculty, obviously you can call that faculty as an entity. As an example here, if you consider a faculty, the faculty, if you consider myself, I am good at databases. I have 8 years of experience. I am an assistant professor and my name is Krishna Bhargavi with some given employee ID. In the same way, how do you distinguish another faculty? So they will also have their own name, their designation, their educational qualification, their salary. So there are certain features that are distinguishing one object from the other object. So if you are able to distinguish one from the other, obviously that real world object is called as an entity. And such kind of similar entities, the collection is called as an entity set. As an example, here I have taken faculty is an entity set. In that, CSE faculty will be there, IT faculty will be there, EC faculty will be there. The attributes will be same for all these, but the values for these attributes will be changing. So the types of entities like physical and logical entity, depending upon whether the entity is tangible or not, we do have these two types of entities. Somebody has turned up their mic. Please, can you mute yourself? Check among yourself. Somebody has turned on the mic. Sheikh Asif, can you mute yourself, please? Is so whether they are touchable or not. So if an entity is physically touchable, you can call that to be physical entity. If you are unable to touch it, you call that to be logical entity. Example, if you consider a faculty, can you touch a faculty? Yes. Can you touch a student? Yes. Can you touch a bank account? It exists, but you cannot touch that. You can put money into that, you can get money from that, but you cannot touch it. Department? No, you cannot touch it. There is a department, the students, faculty, the infrastructure that we have all together is said to be a department, but you cannot touch it physically, right? So whether you are able to touch it or not, depending upon that difference, we call an entity to be physical or logical. With ER diagrams, whatever you depict, labeling the element is very much important. So here entity is represented with a rectangle, and only representing the rectangle is not sufficient. You should label that. So here in the screen, if you observe, you have a rectangular box with the name of the entity within it. Okay. So then moving further, the next important component of ER diagram is attribute. So we are saying that the entities are distinguished from one another. So how are you distinguishing them? By making use of their features or properties. So these properties, technically we call them to be attributes. So in order to describe an entity, we require a set of attributes. And all the entities in a given entity set will obviously have the same set of attributes. First, suppose if we consider the CSE faculty, IT faculty, ECE faculty, all these are entities under the same entity set called faculty. So whether they are CSE or ECE faculty, they have a name, they have a employee ID, they have a designation, they have their salary. Everyone will have the same set of features. The values of the features will differ. So here, if you observe on the screen, I have given some examples of attributes like faculty ID, faculty name, designation, email, and phone number. And it is very much important to be noted that for every attribute within an entity set, we must specify a domain of possible values. For suppose if I say that faculty ID, just specifying faculty ID is not sufficient with databases. For faculty ID, what kind of values are allowed should also be specified, whether it is a number or a character. If it is number, how much size should it accept? All such domains must be specified on the attributes. We technically call these to be the domain constraints. It is nothing but specifying the attributes and the size. So again, the representation, graphical representation for an attribute is an oval or an ellipse with the name of the attribute specified within the symbol. Then under attributes, again we do have different types of attributes. Can you recollect and tell me what are the different types of attributes available? Very good, very good. Simple and composite. ఇంకా అదొకటేనా? Single and multi-valued. Stored and derived. Very good, Sirisha. So we have three different sets of attributes. So the categories are three categories. Under first category you have simple and composite. The second category you have single valued and multi-valued. Under third category you have stored and derived. So let us understand each of these attributes now. So the first one is simple and composite attributes. So simple attribute mean that it cannot be decomposed further. So no more subcomponents will be available under simple attribute. So you cannot divide it into further parts. Any examples for simple attributes? Any examples for simple attributes where the attribute cannot be divided further? Okay, salary is one such attribute. Still, faculty ID, no more students to respond. You are not interested. Age, very good. Nikita, still. Yes, so here if you observe the faculty ID or salary or age, you cannot divide that further. So these attributes are represented with an ellipse specifying the name of the attribute inside the symbol. And then coming to composite attributes, the name itself, it is specifying it is composed of different parts. So here this can be divided into sub parts. Again, examples for that. For suppose if you consider the address will have flat number, apartment name, the area in which it is residing, and the city where you are located at. So the composite attributes can have subparts like this, whereas the simple attribute cannot have any subparts. So this is the first category of attributes. Coming to the second category, you have single valued and multi-valued. Always remember, go with the name. Blindly you will go into the definition. Usually we follow this in our class, right? So single valued and multi-valued, as the name again suggests, these attributes, the single valued attributes, hold only one value at a time. Multi-valued attributes holds more than one values at a time, just by definitions, right? So what could be the examples of single value? Yes, so here Aadhaar card number. Every person will have only one Aadhaar at a given time. Do you agree with me? Yes. Yes, the date of birth, Sirisha, can also be multi-valued because you will have a date of birth specified to be one in the according to your certificates, and probably you can have one more. Yes, phone number comes under multi-valued attributes because as we know nowadays no one is maintaining a single SIM card. Everyone is having dual SIMs, right? So phone number comes under multi-valued attributes. Fine. So here the multi-valued attributes can refer to 0, 1 or multiple values at a time. Example, email. Please make a note of the symbol. Symbols are very much important. So double ellipse indicates multi-valued attributes. So a person may not have email at all, may have only one email, may have more than one email also. So in such cases, we call that to be multi-valued. The third set of attributes are called as stored and derived attributes. So the stored attributes are the one which are storing the values in the database, and from those stored values the derived attributes will be deriving their values. So here for the stored attribute, it supplies values to other attributes like the date of joining or the date of birth. So if you consider date of birth to be the stored attribute, you can derive age from it. If you consider date of joining, you can obtain experience from it. So the experience, the derived attribute is represented here using the dotted ellipse. So do you have any doubts till this part? The types of attributes? Can we proceed with the relationship? Yes. Yeah. Thank you. So here any attribute, if you consider an entity, it is having some set of attributes. So from these set of attributes, we must have one attribute so that you can uniquely identify the entity in a given set. And that attribute is called as a key. Sometimes we may not have the key directly as a single attribute. It could be combination of more than one attribute as well. I'm not focusing about all the types of keys. When I discuss SQL, I'll discuss there. Okay, so here the same example of a faculty. If you consider faculty ID, faculty name, salary, designation, and email, which among these can identify a faculty uniquely? Can you consider the name of the faculty? Can you consider the name of the faculty to be uniquely identifying the faculties? No, because the names may be duplicated. We can have more than one Bhargavi, right? So then salary, again no. Designation, no. Yes, so finally we have a faculty ID to uniquely identify the faculties. In case if there is no faculty ID, then what we will have to do? Consider a combination of faculty name with their email ID. Probably the email IDs will be unique and the combination of name and email ID could be unique. right? So here for any attributes, so for an entity, first to identify it to be an entity, it must have distinguishing attributes. So for those attributes, when once you identify the attributes, try to identify the key, which is the minimal set of attributes to uniquely identify it. So when once you identify that, to represent that graphically, um, use a underline within the label name for that attribute. So this underline indicates that it is the key in that given set of attributes. Okay, so then moving to the relationship, as I just told you, we have difference between relation and relationship. Relation is a table in RDBMS. Relationship is the connection between these objects or entities. That connection we technically call as an association or a relationship. So between two entities, if you have an association, we call that to be a relationship. For suppose here, if you observe, we have considered employees to be one entity. How can I consider employees to be an entity? First, we need to get justified about that. Can an employee be distinguished from other employee? Yes. Can an employee exist in real world? Yes. If these two happen, then provide the attributes SSN. SSN is the social security number which is available for US people. Here we have Aadhaar. Then name is, so then works in is a relationship. Employee works in departments, so department becomes a logical entity. So here you have department ID, department name, and budget. So the relationship is represented here by making use of a rhombus symbol, and the attributes are describing the properties of entities. But for a relationship, if you wanted to have additional descriptions for that relationship, you can provide that by making use of attributes, and these are called as descriptive attributes. Usually in your GATE or in competitive examinations, they'll focus on these descriptive attributes. The attributes describing the relationship is called descriptive attribute. It is very important to note that. Okay. So then the degree of relationship. So for any relationship, when once it is formed, that depending upon the number of entities that are participating in a relationship, we will call it as the degree of relationship. Continuously people are pinging me. Is so how many entities are participating in a relationship? In the previous example here, if you observe, how many entities are participating in the works in relationship? Can somebody quickly respond? How many entities are participating in this relationship? Two, right? Employees and departments. So its degree, works in relationship is said to have a degree of 2. Okay, so we call that to be the degree of relationship. So here you have unary relationship where only one entity participates in its relationship, and it is to be noted that for unary relationship the role indicators are compulsory, they are mandatory to use. Then the second one is binary relationship, where the relationship is having two entities to participate in the relationship. So you have two entities here participating in a relationship. Then ternary, three entities will be participating in the relationship. Quaternary and n-ary, n entities will be participating in the relationship. But ER models only focus on a binary relationship and a unary relationship mostly. So here this is the example for a unary relationship. So why are you calling this to be unary? Because faculty is the only entity that is participating in the reports to relationship. And as I told you, for these unary relationships, mentioning the role indicators is very much important. Role indicators are nothing but faculty is reporting to again faculty only. So one faculty is reporting to the other faculty. So who is this faculty and who is that faculty? We need to identify them, right? So here the subordinates on one end, these are also the faculty members. These are reporting to their supervisor. In our case, assistant professors report to HOD, associate professors report to HOD, right? But both HOD, assistant and associate professors are all faculty members of our department. So that is the reason why here mentioning the role indicators is mandatory when you are using the unary relationship. Then coming to the binary relationship, here sorry, this is an example of ternary relationship. Binary, in the previous slide I have given you, employees works at different locations in different departments. So this is a ternary relationship where you have departments, employees and locations, three entities participating in the relationship. But here the ER diagrams will only handle the binary relationship. They do not handle ternary or more than three, quaternary or n-ary. Can you justify why ER models will handle only binary relationship? Can somebody answer this question? Why ER models will only handle binary relationship? No answer from your end? No answer from you? Yes. So I am only giving you the answer, but at least now make a note of it. Usually, the ER models are translated into the tables. When you have tables, in order to provide connection between two tables, you will be making use of primary key and foreign key. So whenever you speak about a foreign key, it can refer to only one primary key at a time. A table can have more than one connection to more than one table, no issues. But a foreign key can be established only to one primary key at a time. So only because of that reason, you will have only binary relationship. Only binary relationships are allowed in ER diagrams because the primary key and foreign key relationship is established only between these two, not more than two. So that is the reason why here we have ER diagrams to be handled the binary relationships. Okay, so then coming to the constraints on ER diagrams, you have three kinds of constraints: structural, covering and overlap constraints. So again, under structural constraints, you have cardinality ratio and participation constraints. Cardinality ratio is also called as the mapping cardinality, which will tell you how many entities are participating in a relationship. So here, in the previous case, you are speaking about the entity set as a whole. But here, from each entity set A to the entity set B, how many entities are participating? For suppose, if you consider faculty works in a department, can a faculty work in more than one department? Consider the works in relationship and tell me whether the faculty works in a department comes under one to one or many to one. Does the department have only one faculty working in it, or can it have many faculty working in it? And have many, right? So you have many faculty working in a department, so that becomes a many to one relationship. Then if you take an example of choosing the electives, can a student opt for more than one subject, more than one elective at a time, or a student will opt only one elective? One student, one elective subject, right? So that becomes under one-to-one relationship. So here the cardinality ratio or the mapping cardinality depends on the number, how many entities are participating with another entity through a relationship set. So here again the relationships are classified into one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, and many-to-many. I am not stressing it much because you already knew about it very well. So then coming to the participation constraints. Participation constraints basically speak about whether the entities are participating in totality or in partiality. So whether an entity totally participates in a relationship or partially participates in a relationship. So how do you decide this? So for suppose students enrolling in the courses, if you consider this relationship, consider a particular course which is a core subject like DBMS. So, should all the students enroll to DBMS? Yes or no? Yes. So, here the students totally, so the total participation is represented with double line. So, students totally participate in this relationship called enrolled. But why a single line on courses? For suppose, if you consider the subjects like electives, you have AI, STM, cloud computing, subjects like them. So in that case, what is happening? Does all the students participate in these electives? Some of the electives are left without any selection, right? So that is the reason why it is not necessary that all courses are enrolled by the users, by the students. So that is the reason courses are partially participating in this enrolled relationship, whereas students are totally participating in the enrolled relationship. So how do you identify them? If a diagram is given to you, the double line indicates total participation and the single line indicates it is partial participation. Okay, now you tell me, for total participation, what is the minimum cardinality? And for partial participation, what is the minimum cardinality? Usually this bit will also be asked in your GATE or any competitive exams. Minimum cardinality, I am asking about minimum cardinality. For total, how many, what will be the cardinality ratio? What will be the minimum cardinality for total participation? What is the minimum cardinality for partial participation? Sirisha, you are wrong. Partial means there are chances that some courses are not opted by any student. Like for suppose you have this semester computer graphics, cloud computing, and STM. What you people did? You opt for cloud computing and STM and left over CG. So CG is not at all participating in the enrollment. So what is the minimum cardinality on courses side? Is it zero or not? Yes. So here for partial participation, the entities will have a minimum cardinality of 0. For total participation, at least one student must get registered to it. If I say that, so then the total participation will have minimum cardinality as 1. Maximum cardinality in both of these cases could be n, because all the students may participate totally. For partial participation, probably all of them may join, right? So that is the reason why the maximum cardinality is not decided. It is just spoken to be m or n. It depends upon the number of entities that are participating, but the minimum cardinality is fixed. For partial participation, it would be 0. For total participation, it would be 1. Please correct yourself. Okay. So then, moving further, the types of entities. You have strong entity and weak entity. Earlier, I told you physical entity and logical entity. So the types of entities are classified depending upon their physical touchability. If you are physically touching them, you are calling them to be physical, and if you are not touching them physically, you call it to be logical. In the same way, if an entity is having an identifying primary key, you call it to be strong. If you do not have a primary key, you call it to be weak. That is the only difference between strong and weak entities. Then, some points to remember from weak entities. So as it do not have a primary key by itself, obviously it must depend upon the primary key of another entity. So if it is depending upon the primary key of a strong entity, that strong entity is now called as an identifying owner in this perspective. Usually an entity, if it is having a primary key, we call that to be strong entity. But in case if you have a weak entity, then that strong entity is no more called as a strong entity, it is called as an identifying owner. But why do we call that to be identifying owner? Because it is the one which is identifying the weak entity uniquely because of its relationship with the weak entity. Is that clear? Do you want me to repeat? Okay. So if there is a weak entity, as it is not identifiable by itself, as it is taking the help of primary key of a strong entity, you are calling that strong entity to be the identifying owner. And such kind of relationship is said to be the identifying relationship. Okay, and two things that we will have to remember about weak entity is the weak entity participates totally in the strong entity, because if there is a weak entity, obviously it must depend upon the primary key of the strong entity. So for that reason, if there is a value in the weak entity, it will have a connection with strong entity. So that is the reason why it is total participation. And one strong entity can have many dependencies. So always your weak entity participates in a one to many relationship. So one will be on the stronger side, many will be on the weaker side. So if I consider dependence, for me there will be my kids who are depending on me, for my family who are depending on me. So all these are dependents on me. So how do you recognize my family? You will be saying that she is Bhargavi ma'am's daughter or he is Bhargavi ma'am's husband. So you will be deciding that depending only on my name or my faculty ID. So you are recognizing my family through me. So that is the reason why I am the identifying owner here. And all these people you will be knowing because they are totally participating with me. And as I have these many dependents, we call that to be one-to-many relationship. Please keep this in mind. Okay, so this is the example that we have taken, and for a weak entity, you will be representing in double rectangle, and the attribute which is taken to be in combination with the primary key of identifying owner, that attribute is called as a discriminator. It is also called as a partial key. Usually in examinations, even this will also be asked. Okay, so the attribute for a weak entity to recognize it to be with the strong entity, what do you call it to be? Descriptive attribute, simple attribute, discriminator, none of these. It will be discriminator. Next question. A weak entity dash participates in the identifying owner. Totally, partially, no, all. Total participation. Right. So these points have to be there in our mind, because in your examination perspective, their focus will mostly be on the cardinality ratios and weak entity in these concepts of ER models. Others will not be touched much. Then coming to the extended ER features, you have specialization, generalization that comes under class hierarchies and aggregation. So already we know that specialization and generalization, their purpose is to have the hierarchical structure. So it is represented using a relationship. So here you will have employees, and these are the subclasses: hourly employees and contract employees. So how do you read them? Hourly employee is an employee, contract employee is an employee, right? So this can be called as a hierarchy. But when do you call this to be specialization? When do you call this to be generalization? The both of them can happen here. So if I have the employees entity, then depending upon a special set of attributes, if I am able to categorize them into subclasses, that we call to be specialization. So under employees, there are certain people who are only working on hourly basis. Some employees are working based on contract period, like 6 months or 1 year. So in that case, they have these special features. So along with the employee ID, name, salary and all, the hourly based employees will have number of hours worked. The contract employees will have the tenure for which they are taken for contract. Right. So with these specialized attributes, now you can again create them into subclasses. You have specialized classes. So that is called as a specialization. Then coming to generalization, the reverse way. You have subclasses. Hourly employees have employee ID, name, salary, and number of hours worked. Contract employees also have what should I say? Faculty ID, employee name, salary, but contract period. So out of these two subclasses, if you observe, there are certain common attributes. So pull them, all these common attributes, into the superclass, and we call that to be generalization. So specialization and generalization are the reverse processes of one another. Okay. So the overlap constraints here will be available. I earlier discussed about structural constraints. So now here we'll be covering about the overlap constraints and covering constraints. So overlap constraints determine whether two subclasses are allowed to have the same entity, yes or no. For suppose if there is an employee called Bhargavi, can Bhargavi be both an hourly based employee as well as a contract employee for the same organization? Can it happen? Yes or no? I need quick answer. Can Bhargavi be an hourly employee as well as a contract based employee? No. Very good. I'll ask you one more question, because you do not know about faculties whether they work for hourly based or contract based. Can a student be both a management student as well as a scholarship based student? Because you know about yourself better. Yes. So the answer is no. But I pose you one more question. Again, under the students, if I have one more subcategory, what should we say? Yeah. Let us take the categories like general, SC, ST, OBC, EBC, like that, BCP, and so on. So now in this case, can a student be both convener as well as a general category student? Yes or no? Yes. Right. So here what you have observed, when there are different subclasses, different hierarchies from the same superclass, the two subclasses can have an overlap. So here, if you can have such overlap, you will be representing that like this. Contract employees overlap senior employees. So if there is a contract employee who works only for 6 months in this college, obviously he is a senior most employee who may be working only for some period here and they may go for some other organization again. Okay, similarly, the covering constraints. So, what does this covering constraint mean? These determine whether the entities in the subclass include collectively all entities in the superclass. So, in simple words, the subclass tuples whatever you have, the union of these, you must get the superclass. So, how do you understand that with our common terminology? If I have the subclasses like management students, scholarship students, and convener quota students, a union of management students, union convener quota students, union scholarship students, will I get all the students available in the college? Yes or no? Did you get the question? Yes. So here the students are covered by the management quota, convener quota, and scholarship quota as well. So all these three together are covering the superclass. So if that is the case, you provide that or specify that beside your ER diagram in this specification by writing hourly employees and contract employees cover employees. Is that clear? So then the next one called as aggregation. So till now we have seen relationship between entities only. A relationship is an association between entities. But aggregation is the one which is forming the association among relationships. So how can one relationship participate in another relationship? That is our question, right? So here is the example that we are taking. Employees monitors the projects that are sponsored by departments. So the employees have to monitor this entire activity called projects sponsored by departments. So the employee has to know the projects, who are the sponsors, from what time are they sponsoring. So if that is the case, can I add monitors directly to the projects? In that case, you will get only the project information, but you will not get who has sponsored it, from what time have they sponsored it. If I connect monitors to departments, you will get what are the departments available, but you cannot get the information what projects are they sponsoring. So what we will have to do, the project information, the department's information, both are available with this sponsors table. So within sponsors, you will get the project ID, you will get the department ID, since what time are they being sponsored. All the three are available with sponsors. So that is the reason why we wanted to connect monitors to the sponsors directly. And we call this to be aggregation. I hope you are not comfortable with the ER models. Before going for the knowledge check, that is before going for discussion on some of the gate bits, let me know whether the concept is clear for you, whether you really got brushed up with the ER models. Do you have any doubts with respect to ER models? If you have any doubts, please post questions here. I'll answer and then we will go for the questions, gate questions. Do you have any doubts? Please post your questions in the chat box. No questions. So shall we go up with the knowledge check? Shall we start answering the questions? I want 100% participation from you guys for each question. And you know me very well. I require the justifications as well. Just answering A, B, C, D is not sufficient for me. Why it is so also you must tell me. Okay. Okay. Once the picture of aggregation. Okay. Let me go. Yeah. Have a look on this, Nikita. If you have any doubt, you post the question. I'll repeat if you require. Ma'am, what is the relation between sponsors and departments? Yeah, here we have represented that using a total participation double line. It has got merged. All the departments are sponsoring to one project or the other. So it is a total participation from the departments into this sponsors relationship. Is that clear? So shall we proceed? Yeah. Thank you, Nikita, for confirming me. So here is your first question. Post me the answer in the chat box. I am reading the question for you. The number of entities participating in a relationship is called its cardinality, composite identifiers, degree, none of these. What is the answer? Think before you answer. I know that you will get confused between cardinality and degree. That's the reason why I have kept this question. Is it degree or cardinality? Balram. Is. So here the answer is degree. It is not cardinality. Why so? Please focus yourself. When you are speaking about cardinality, you do not tell about the relationship. One entity set participating in a relationship with another entity set comes into the picture. So here, are you speaking about the entity sets or entities participating in a relationship? We are not specifying the entity sets participating in another entity set. So if the entity sets are participating in another entity set, then the cardinality comes. So here the entities participating in a relationship is asked for. So it is called as the degree. So the number of entities participating in a relationship is called its degree. So are you clear with this? Shall I go for the next question? Asif and Balram. Clear? Very good, very good. So let us go for the second question. Yeah, tell me. A relationship among entities of the same class is called as. Think before you answer. A relationship among entities of the same class is called as binary relationship, weak relationship, unary relationship, recursive relationship. Very good, because we have discussed only the concept of unary relationship. You are answering that it is unary relationship, but there is also another name for unary relationship called as recursive relationship. Of course, it is not a, because binary relationship must have two entities participating in the relationship. Weak relationship must have a relationship between stronger entity and weaker entity, and of course it is not called as weak relationship. We call that to be identifying relationship. And the answer here for this question is C and D, both are answers. The other name for unary relationship is called as recursive relationship. Please make a note of this. Can I go for the next question? Yes. Can you tell me this? Descriptive attributes are used to record information about participating entities, record information about relationships, record information about data, record information about attributes. For this, you need to answer the option as well as what is the answer for the remaining options also. Think, take 2 minutes of time. Sirisha, it is B. Record information about relationships. No more answers. What about Asif Balram? Balram told that record information about data. Nikita. Nikita went off for answers. There is no knowledge check. Shweta. Okay. Okay. Most of you told that it is recording information about relationship. That's fine. I'm not revealing the answer yet. You tell me what are used to record information about participating entities. For A, what is the answer for A? Dash are used to record information about participating entities. Do you record information about the participating entities? That is the reason why I told you, you must have justification before answering. No answer? Or thinking? Might be degree for A. Degree is only telling you the number. How many entities are participating? That's it. You will not get any information regarding that. Thank you. Then tell me the answer, Sirisha. No answer from your side. So here we make use of Anusha. Can we consider participation constraints? No, ma'am. Participation constraints will be only specifying you whether you are participating totally or partially. It is not recording any information. Here recording information mean you need to get the information about the entities that are participating. So like what are the entities that are participating, how many entities are participating, what are their attributes. So all such information must be available. Okay. So the answer for option A in recording the information about participating entities is a relationship. If you observe a relationship will have its own attributes. Along with that, it will have the primary key of the participating entities. For suppose if I consider works in relationship is associated with employees who are working in to which departments are they, does they belong to. So both of these will be available with A. Do you agree with that? Sirisha, are you there? Yes, yes, very good, very good. So here, relations are the one which are recording information about the participating entities. Then what is the answer for C option? Sorry, which records information about data? No, records are the one where you are storing the data. I am speaking about the information about these records. Exactly. Very good, Sirisha. It is a very good progress. You have data dictionary. In the metadata, you will be recording information about the data. In short, we usually call this to be data about data. Probably you might have heard that word. Data about data is metadata, and which will be recording metadata. The data dictionary records the metadata. Perfect. Then coming to the last one, records information about attributes. Can you record information about attributes? Where do you store the information about attributes? Can you store it at least? In the table's description, if you describe table, what will come? The table attributes, the constraints on them, the data types they have, the sizes they hold. Yes or no? So the table descriptions will provide the information about the attributes. So here for this question, the answer is B. Descriptive attributes are used to record information about relationships. I'm not direct just giving the answers. I wanted to explain you why not the other one also, because in your examinations, if you have any confusion, you must justify yourself and make yourself strong that yes, this is the answer. For that sake, I have been discussing for this much long. So here the answer is B. Then a very simple question. Please try to answer. Relationship between the owner entity set and weak entity set is one to many to many to one to one. Relationship between owner entity set and weak entity set. Perfect. Still any other answers? That's it. Only 3 members for this question. Yes, it is a good go. So here you have the relationship between owner entity set and weak entity set to be a one to many relationship. Yes, and I already told you that weak entity must participate totally with the strong entity. These are the two things that you will have to keep in mind about the weak entity set. For sure, one bit will be there on these usually. Yes. I asked you this question earlier, but the options are different. Please try to focus and answer me. A minimum cardinality of 0 specifies no participation, total participation, partial participation, none of these. Think and then only answer. Are you sure, Balram? Very good, Pavani. You go opted for both partial and no. Still, any other answers? It's not A. It is partial participation. Balram is correct. Is here you are saying that minimum cardinality is 0. You have not told anything about the maximum cardinality. So in that case, if the minimum cardinality is 0, there could be other entities which are participating more than once also. You are not aware of that. So you cannot say that there is no participation at all. Is that clear? So if the minimum cardinality is 0, it is partial participation. If the minimum cardinality is 1, it is total participation. If there is an entity with no participation, then there will not be any cardinality for it. It even will not be 0. There is no participation, no cardinality ratio at all. Please keep that in mind. That is the reason why I kept this question. Is that clear? Asif, Anusha, Sirisha. Okay. So can you now justify yourself why it is partial participation? Yeah, good. So minimum cardinality of 0 specifies partial participation. This is a lengthier question, a thought-provoking question taken from GATE. Try to read the question, analyze the question for 5 minutes and then answer. Have you read the question? In an ER model, suppose R is a many-to-one relationship from entity set E1 to entity set E2. Assume that E1 and E2 participate totally in R and the cardinality of E1 is greater than the cardinality of E2. Which one of the following is true about R? So then in the options, if you observe, they are speaking about whether it is a one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one or many-to-many. Take the first option. Every entity in E1 is associated with exactly one entity in E2. So what do you mean by this? In E1, all the entities, every entity means most of the entities are participating with only one entity in E2. Second one, some of the entities are participating with more than one entity in E2. So on E1, it is not a total, what should I say, total participation. But in your question, it is given that E1 and E2 are participating totally. So your option B can be removed. Then coming to option C, every entity in E2 is associated with exactly one entity in E1. Every entity in E2 is associated with at most one entity in E1. So which of these is correct about the relation R? For your convenience, I have already removed option B. So it should be from option A, C, D. So you have answered that it is C. Shall I reveal the answer? So everyone is confirming that it is C only. Total participation. So C, madam. I guess that it is A. I am not yet revealing. Please, you only look after these two options A and C and tell me whether it is A or C. I vote for A. Why am I voting? I'll tell you, but before that, you tell. So, what option are you going with, A or C? Balram, um, Nikita, yes, ma'am, A, because many to one relationship, Balram. But as it's mentioned as total participation, that means every entity in E1 is also participating. Is this right, ma'am? Yes, Balram. So please see here. We said that in the question it is given that it is a total participation. Right. So even if it is a total participation, we are also given one more clause that R is a many to one relationship. So in your options, it should be satisfying this many to one relationship also. So we have a tug between A and C. So let me first answer for C, then we will go for A. So what does C mean? Every entity in E2 is associated with exactly one entity in E1. So many is coming on E2 and one is coming on E1. But kindly read your question. Many to one relationship from E1 to E2, but C indicates from E2 to E1. Am I right or not? Balram, do you agree with that? Yes. So that is the reason why here I am saying that the answer is A. First thing, understand whether the cardinality is matching or not. When once the cardinality is matching, please keep in mind about the cardinality ratios where you have one to many to one, and many to many. So when you have many entities to be participating, so every entity must participate from E1 side. But in E2, only one entity must be mapped with because it is a many to one relationship. Is that clear? So that is the reason why here we are choosing the option A. Only these questions I have gathered from PR models, from tomorrow's session onwards, because on the first day itself I do not want to dump you with more number of questions, and that too from ER model you may not be having that much focus. Tomorrow's session is the very valuable session with respect to your placements or with respect to the competitive examinations or gate. Well, tomorrow we'll be discussing about functional dependencies and normalization. So before I start up the functional dependencies and normalization, I'll also provide you a brief introduction or a quick revision of the keys, various keys in RDBMS. Okay, so if you have any doubts, please post your questions in the chat box for today's session. If possible, for tomorrow, get prepared, because as we have 2 hours, tomorrow I'll be focusing only for 45 minutes on the theoretical stuff, because to answer normalization and functional dependencies is a challenging one. So let us focus most of our time on gate bits for that particular topic. Okay, so have a revision and practice on functional dependencies and normalization. Tomorrow I will anyhow brush up with single examples for each, and then we will go up with the gate bits. And I require a quick feedback also. Can we go up with this kind of session, or do you want me to completely take up theory, or do you want me to completely go up with bits without any revision? Three options are given. Option A, complete bits. Option B, complete theory. Option C, as we followed today. Same like today? Yeah. Fine, then we will divide our time into half. So in the first half, we will have a revision on the session so that none of you will be missing the concepts. And in the second half, we will have discussion on gate bits. Okay. So I request you to kindly post your roll numbers here, because the names were available. I'll provide the attendance. Chanduram O1. Then